Jennifer was only 18 when her life shattered. In her tiny dorm room, alone and terrified, she gave birth to a baby she never planned for and never believed she deserved. Fear swallowed her whole. Fear of her parents, fear of judgment, fear of a future she could not imagine. In a moment of panic and confusion, she wrapped the crying newborn in her hoodie, carried the infant outside, and placed the baby gently inside a waste bin behind the hostel. Her heart cracked open as she walked away, but she forced herself to believe there was no other choice. Years passed, and Jennifer rebuilt herself piece by piece. She changed schools, changed cities, changed everything about her life. She buried the memories so deep that she trained her mind to treat that night like a dream that never happened. To everyone around her, Jennifer was a quiet young woman who avoided trouble. Only she knew the darkness hiding beneath her calm smile, a secret she prayed no one would ever uncover. One ordinary afternoon, Jennifer's world stopped. She was walking home from work when she saw a young man sitting on a bench across the street. Something about him froze her feet to the ground. The shape of his eyes, the curve of his smile, the way he held his backpack like it was a shield. He looked exactly like her. For a moment, Jennifer could not breathe. Her mind screamed at her to walk away, but her heart whispered truth she did not want to face. The young man looked up and their eyes met, deep, sharp, and painfully familiar. Jennifer felt her knees weaken. It was like staring at a memory she had spent years running from. She turned quickly and hurried away, her pulse racing, her hands shaking. "No," she whispered to herself. "It can't be him." But deep inside, she knew fate had finally caught up with the secret she left behind. That night, Jennifer lay awake in the darkness, trembling. She had spent years forcing herself to move on, but the past had returned with the face of a boy who looked just like the child she abandoned. Regret, the kind that burns the soul, crept into her chest. She pressed a pillow against her face to muffle her sobs, terrified that the truth was finally unfolding piece by painful piece. At work the next morning, her friend Jane noticed a change immediately. Jennifer's eyes were dim, her voice shaky, and she avoided every question. Jane reached for her hand gently. "What's wrong, Jen?" she asked softly. Jennifer wanted to tell her everything, to confess the secret she had carried alone for so long. But just as she opened her mouth, a familiar voice echoed from behind them, a young man speaking to the receptionist. Jennifer's heart nearly stopped. The young man introduced himself as David. He said he was looking for someone who used to live in this town years ago, a woman he had never met, but whose face he had drawn from stories and imagination. Jennifer stood behind the office partition, hidden but trembling as she listened. "My name is David," he said. "I'm searching for my mother." Her heart crashed into her ribs. Her breath caught. The room felt too small, too bright, too loud. Jennifer wanted to run, but her legs felt nailed to the floor. She peeked through the small gap in the divider and saw David's nervous hands gripping a folder. Inside was a worn-out baby blanket and a faded photo of a waste bin behind a school hostel. Jennifer clamped a hand over her mouth to stop herself from crying. She knew this moment would come someday, but she never expected it to come like this. For the next 2 days, Jennifer avoided work. She stayed indoors, curtains closed, fighting the storm inside her. She felt like a criminal hiding from her own child. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the baby she left behind, tiny, helpless, crying for a mother who never looked back. The guilt clawed at her like a living thing. She wondered if David hated her. She wondered if he blamed her for everything. But fate had planned she could not escape. On the third day, rain poured heavily as Jennifer tried to slip out to buy groceries. As she stepped under a shop shelter, she looked up, and there he was again, David, standing directly beside her. So close she could hear his breathing. So close she could no longer run. For the first time, mother and son shared silence that felt heavier than truth itself. David turned slightly, his voice gentle. "Have we met before? You look familiar." Jennifer's stomach twisted. She forced a weak smile and shook her head, afraid that if she spoke, her voice would crack. But David wasn't convinced. He stared at her with eyes full of uncertainty and longing, the same eyes she had stared into the night he was born. The truth pressed against her lips, begging to be released. Then David asked a question she had feared for years. "Ma'am, do you know anything about a baby that was abandoned behind a school hostel 18 years ago?" Her heart shattered. Tears rose instantly. Her fingers trembled uncontrollably. She couldn't speak. All she could do was stare at him, at the living reminder of her mistake. As her whole world began to crumble, Jennifer felt the weight of every year she had spent hiding. She lowered her head, tears falling freely, mixing with the rain. This was no longer a secret she could bury. This was her son, a boy who had survived, grown, and returned with heart searching for answers. She felt her chest tighten painfully as she whispered, "David, I..." But her voice broke before she could finish the sentence. David stepped closer, confusion rising in his eyes. He didn't understand why the stranger was crying so hard, why her hands trembled like someone carrying a wound too deep to mention. Jennifer swallowed hard, lifted her face, and met his eyes. The moment felt like the world was holding its breath. With shaking lips and a voice filled with years of pain, she finally said the words she never thought she'd speak again. "David, I am your mother." For a moment, David just stood there, silent, frozen, staring at her as if she had spoken a language he didn't understand. The rain fell harder, drumming against the shelter roof, but neither of them moved. Jennifer watched his breathing quicken, watched confusion turn into disbelief. Disbelief twist into shock. His lips parted, but no words came out. His eyes searched her face for lies, excuses, anything other than the truth she had just spoken. Finally, David stepped back. No, that's not possible," he said, voice trembling. "My mother left me. She didn't want me. She threw me away." Jennifer's heart cracked. She tried to reach for him, but he pulled his arm away as if her touch burned him. "Why now?" he whispered painfully. "Why pretend to care after all these years?" She wanted to explain, but guilt wrapped around her throat, stealing every word. The next day, David returned, not to forgive, but to demand answers. They sat in a quiet cafe, both avoiding each other's eyes. David clenched a baby blanket in his hands, the only link he had carried his whole life. Jennifer trembled as she began to speak. She told him everything, how young she was, how frightened, how alone, how the night of his birth was a night she felt her world collapse. Her voice broke as she explained how one mistake shaped the rest of her life. Then David told her the part she never knew. A cleaner had heard a noise coming from the waste bin behind the hostel. He found the crying newborn wrapped in a hoodie and rushed him to the clinic nearby. A church-run orphanage took him in afterward. He grew up in a small but kind home, surrounded by people who tried their best, but he always felt something missing. Jennifer covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. She had spent years imagining her son's suffering, not knowing that fate, despite everything, had given him a chance to live. David listened, but the pain in his eyes remained sharp. "You should have looked for me," he said. "You should have tried." Jennifer nodded, accepting every blow. She had no defense, no excuses strong enough to erase the past. "I hated you for years," he admitted, his voice low. "I thought about you every birthday. I imagined what kind of woman could throw away her own child." Each word stabbed deeper into Jennifer's heart. "I deserve your anger," she whispered. "I deserve worse." But David shook his head. "I didn't come here to punish you," he said. "I came because I needed answers. I needed to know why." The silence between them stretched, heavy with pain and truth. For the first time, Jennifer realized that healing would not happen in a day. It would be slow, messy, and uncertain. But she was willing to walk through every step, if he let her. Later that evening, David asked her the question she least expected. "Do you know who adopted me?" Jennifer blinked. She didn't. She had never had the courage to ask anyone what happened after that night. David explained that a man named Mr. Benson, a quiet carpenter, had taken him in when he was 5. "He wasn't perfect," David said softly, "but he tried. He gave me a roof, food, and a name." The way David spoke about him made Jennifer's chest swell with gratitude and jealousy all at once. "Can I meet him?" Jennifer whispered. David looked unsure but nodded slowly. "Maybe," he said. "Not today, but someday." It was the first time he didn't push her away. A small softness entered his voice, a sign that maybe, just maybe, the wall between them had cracked. Jennifer held on to that tiny hope like a lifeline. Over the next week, David kept his distance but didn't disappear completely. He sent short messages, sometimes just an odd emoji or simple good morning. Jennifer cherished each one. She knew he was still hurt, still struggling, but he hadn't cut her off. That alone was a miracle. She prayed every night for strength, asking for forgiveness she knew she didn't deserve. One afternoon, David showed up at her door unexpectedly. "I'm ready," he said quietly, ready to talk more. Jennifer stepped aside, her hands shaking. They sat in her tiny living room, surrounded by the silence of two souls trying to repair what life had broken. She apologized again, not just with words, but with tears, humility, and truth. David listened, not with acceptance yet, but with the willingness to understand. That was enough. Jennifer brought out a worn box from under her bed. Inside were old journals, letters she wrote to her son every year on his birthday, but never mailed. Letters filled with regret, love, and prayers. "I wrote these for you," she whispered. "I kept them because I didn't know if you were alive. I didn't know if you would ever want them." David opened the first letter slowly. His eyes softened as he read her shaky handwriting. With each page, David saw not the heartless girl he imagined, but a young mother drowning in guilt and fear, wishing she could turn back time. He saw her pain. He felt her sincerity. Something inside him loosened, just a little. He looked up at her, and for the first time, his expression carried more sadness and anger. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said honestly, "but I can see that you never forgot me." Jennifer nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "And I never will." A few days later, David asked Jennifer to walk with him. They ended up at the old church-sponsored orphanage, now a community center. David stood at the doorway, his voice quiet. "This is where my life started," he said. Jennifer's hand trembled beside her. He didn't take it, but he didn't push it away either. Together, they walked through the halls where David had taken his first steps, laughed his first laugh, cried his first tears. Outside the building, David finally spoke words Jennifer had prayed to hear. "I'm still hurt. I'm still angry. But I want to try. I want to see where this goes." Jennifer closed her eyes as her knees weakened. Relief washed through her like warm light. She didn't hug him. Not yet. She respected the space he needed. But hope bloomed quietly inside her. For the first time in 18 years, Jennifer felt the possibility of a second chance. David finally agreed to let Jennifer meet Mr. Benson, the man who raised him, the man whose name he carried, the man who stepped in when she stepped away. The night before the visit, Jennifer barely slept. She kept rehearsing what she would say, but every sentence felt too small, too weak, too late. She wondered if he would hate her, blame her, or reject her outright. She whispered a shaky prayer, asking for strength she wasn't sure she had. The next morning, David came to pick her up. He didn't smile, but his eyes were softer. As they walked Mr. Benson's small wooden house, Jennifer's legs trembled so badly she had to grip the gate for support. Inside, she saw a man with tired eyes and gentle hands, hands that had carried her child when she could not. Mr. Benson's gaze lingered on her face, and Jennifer felt exposed, judged, forgiven, and punished all at once. Mr. Benson invited them to sit. His voice was calm, steady, and warm, like a man who had seen enough pain to know when to offer peace. "David told me everything," he said, looking at Jennifer carefully. She braced herself, but instead of anger, she saw compassion. "You were a child," he continued, "a frightened child who made a desperate choice." Jennifer burst into tears. She had expected condemnation, not kindness. He told her how he found David at the orphanage, thin, sickly, and quiet. "He clung to me," Mr. Benson said softly, as if he was waiting for someone to choose him. Jennifer's heart tightened like a fist. She covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. "Thank you," she whispered between sobs. "Thank you for saving my son." Mr. Benson shook his head gently. "I didn't save him. Love did." After they left Mr. Benson's house, David insisted they sit on a bench nearby. The sky was fading into evening, and the air felt heavy with questions that had waited 18 years. "I want you to tell me everything," David said quietly, "from beginning to end." Jennifer inhaled deeply. Her voice shook as she took him back to that terrible night. How the cramps started, how she panicked, how she felt utterly alone in the hostel restroom as she delivered him. She told him how she fainted after giving birth and woke up bleeding, confused and terrified. How she acted out of fear, not hate. How she regretted it every single day afterward. David listened, his face tight, his eyes wet. He had imagined a heartless mother, a cruel girl. But not this version of the story. Not a broken young woman who had been drowning in fear. The truth softened something inside him, but the ache was still there, deep and real. For the first time since they met, David reached out and held her hand. The touch was light, unsure, but it was the first bridge he had ever built toward her. Jennifer's lips trembled as she looked at their hands. Mother and son, separated by fear, reunited by truth. "I'm not asking you to forget," she whispered. "I know I hurt you in a way that words can't fix." David nodded slowly. "But you're trying," he said. "That matters more than I expected." They sat there quietly as the streetlights flickered on. For years, Jennifer had been carrying the pain alone, but now the pain belonged to both of them. Not to destroy, but to heal. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was hopeful. It was a sound of a bond rebuilding itself, one heartbeat at a time. Just when things began to shift, fate tested them again. One evening, while Jennifer was closing her shop, a woman she hadn't seen in years approached her. Her name was Clara, Jennifer's former roommate, the only witness to the night Jennifer gave birth. Jennifer's breath caught as she recognized her. Clara looked bitter, angry, and full of a truth she had carried like a weapon. "I heard your son is back," Clara said, crossing her arms. "Does he know everything? Or only the parts that make you look pitiful?" Jennifer felt her stomach twist. Clara knew things she had hoped would never surface. Things about the man who abandoned Jennifer. Things about the threats that pushed her into panic. Things Jennifer never told David. "Stay away," Jennifer whispered, her voice shaking. But Clara smirked. "If you don't tell him, I will." Jennifer walked home trembling, her heart racing with dread. She knew Clara wasn't lying. She would reveal everything. The secrets Jennifer had buried were deeper than even David knew. He thought she abandoned him because she was scared. He didn't know she had been threatened by the child's father, a boy from school who promised to destroy her if she ever told anyone the baby was his. The shame, the bullying, the fear. Jennifer had protected David even in her worst moment. But none of that was in the story she told him. That night, Jennifer sat on her bed, wondering what would happen when the full truth came out. Would David walk away forever? Would he think she had lied to him again? Each thought stabbed her heart. She had just begun to gain a tiny sliver of trust from her son, and now it felt like everything was about to crumble all over again. The next day, David knocked on her door unexpectedly. He looked confused, anxious. "Someone came to see me," he said slowly. Jennifer's heart stopped. "Clara," he added. The room began to spin around her. "She told me there's more I don't know. She said you didn't tell me everything." Jennifer sat down, trembling so badly her hands kept slipping against the couch. David's voice cracked. "Mom, is there something else? Something you're hiding?" Jennifer lifted her eyes, full of tears and fear. She knew this was the moment that could either destroy or rebuild their fragile connection. With a shaking breath, she whispered, "Yes, there is more. The real truth about your father and about that night." Everything hung in the air between them, fragile and dangerous, like a single match in a room full of gasoline. David sat quietly in Daniel's living room, his eyes fixed on the framed photographs on the wall. Pictures of birthdays, graduations, and family gatherings, moments he had never experienced, memories he would never have. He looked down at the old bracelet on his wrist again, the one they found with him as a baby. JJ was the only clue he had. All his life, he wondered why he was abandoned, why he wasn't wanted. But now, for the first time, he felt like the answers were close, almost too close. Daniel watched the boy carefully. There was an ache in David's eyes, the kind that comes from years of feeling unwanted. He saw himself in the boy, lost, searching, pretending to be strong. He stepped closer and said, "David, I'll help you find the truth. Whatever it is." The boy nodded slowly. "I'm not afraid of the truth, sir. I'm afraid it will break me." Jennifer sat at the edge of her bed, her fingers trembling as she traced the lines on the old hospital card Jane had found. That card carried a date she had tried to erase from her memory, the night she gave birth alone, shivering, terrified, and ashamed. She was only 17. She had no family support, no courage, no voice. And when things went wrong, she made the worst mistake of her life, one that haunted her every day since. Jane sat beside her, gently holding her hand. "You can't keep carrying this alone, Jen," she whispered. "Secrets don't die. They only grow teeth." Jennifer swallowed hard. What if the truth destroys everything? What if I look into his eyes and he hates me? Her voice cracked. Jane's eyes softened. Not knowing destroys more. There was a quiet knock on Jennifer's door, gentle, almost scared. Jennifer's heart jumped. Jane stood and opened it, revealing Daniel and David standing outside. Jennifer froze. Time seemed to stop. Her breath shook, her mind spiraled, and her past rose from the ground like a ghost standing in front of her. David stared at her, confused. "Ma, do you know anything about a girl named Jennifer James?" Jennifer's legs went weak. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She finally whispered, "Yes, I know her." Daniel stepped forward, his voice firm but kind. "Jennifer, please, it's time." Tears filled her eyes, her soul trembling. She knew this was the moment she had feared for years. There was no running anymore. Jennifer took a deep breath and pointed to the chairs. Everyone sat, but the air was so heavy it felt like it could break. Jennifer's hands shook as she touched the bracelet on David's wrist. She recognized it instantly. The bracelet her mother had bought for her unborn child, the only thing she held on to when she thought her life was over. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "David," she whispered, her voice breaking. "That bracelet. I put it on your wrist the night you were born." David's eyes widened. Daniel inhaled sharply. Jennifer continued, her voice trembling like a frightened child. "I was 17. I was scared. I was alone. And I made the worst mistake of my life. I didn't throw you away because I didn't love you. I threw you away because I didn't know how to live with myself." David's breath hitched, a mix of shock, confusion, and pain. The room echoed with silence. David stood abruptly. His chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. "So you're my mother?" His voice cracked. Jennifer nodded, tears streaming. "Yes." David looked away, his hands trembling. He felt betrayed, confused, angry, relieved, all at once. He whispered, "Why didn't you come back for me? Why didn't you fight? Why didn't you—" His voice broke. "Choose me." Jennifer covered her mouth as sobs escaped. "I punished myself for years. I thought you were dead. I thought I deserved to suffer." She finally looked into his eyes that looked just like hers. "But you were always my son, even if the world didn't let me keep you." David clenched his fists, tears forming. He didn't know whether to hug her or run. Daniel stepped forward slowly. "David, it's okay not to know how to feel." David sank back into the chair, burying his face in his hands. Daniel watched mother and son silently. The moment was heavy, painful, sacred. Jennifer slowly approached David, kneeling beside him like a broken prayer. "I cannot change the past," she whispered. "But if you allow me, I want a chance to love you. Properly this time." David lifted his head, his face wet with tears. "I don't know if I'm ready," he said honestly. Jennifer nodded. "You don't have to be. Just don't shut me out." Something inside David softened, just a little. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, but a tiny, trembling door opening somewhere deep inside him. They stayed together until night fell. No one spoke loudly. No one rushed anything. Daniel bought food, none of them touched. Jennifer watched David with quiet heartbreak, memorizing every expression, every movement. Afraid he might disappear, she blinked. As they were leaving, David turned to her, His voice was low, fragile. "Can I see you again?" Jennifer pressed her hand against her lips to hold back her tears. "Yes, anytime, always." And for the first time in 17 years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't too broken to be loved. David hardly slept that night. His mind replayed Jennifer's trembling voice, the bracelet, the confession, the years he spent wondering who he was. Now he had answers, but the truth felt heavier than the lies. The moonlight through his window made everything worse. It reminded him of the waste bin where he was found, the place where his life had almost ended. He pressed his palm against his chest, as if trying to stop his heart from tearing itself apart. "Why wasn't I enough back then?" he whispered into the darkness. Meanwhile, Jennifer lay curled on her bed, replaying every second of their conversation. She held the empty bracelet case in her hand, the case she never threw away. Each breath she took felt like a punishment, each blink like a reminder of the day she failed her child. "God, let my son find space in his heart for me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't deserve him, but please don't let me lose him again." At school the next day, David could barely focus. His friends laughed and chatted, but he felt like he was drowning inside his own body. He stared at the classroom board, seeing nothing but flashes of his own abandonment. The students around him had parents who cared, parents who showed up, but he had been left in the cold. Even after finding the truth, the pain clung to him like a second skin. During break, he walked behind the science block to cry where no one would see him. He had spent years pretending to be tough, pretending he didn't care that he was adopted, pretending his past didn't bother him. But now everything was raw, open and bleeding again. He leaned his head against the wall and whispered, "If she loved me, why didn't she fight for me?" Jennifer woke up with swollen eyes and shaky hands. Every noise outside her window made her tense. She feared it was David coming to say goodbye forever. She cleaned the house 3 times, cooked food she couldn't eat, and kept staring at her phone waiting for his message. "He needs space," Jane told her gently. "He's been hit with years of pain in one day." But space felt like punishment. Jennifer paced across her living room, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "What if he thinks I don't want him?" she muttered to herself. "What if he thinks I gave him up because he wasn't good enough?" She sank onto the couch, buried her face in her palms, and sobbed until her body trembled. She had waited 17 years for a chance to hold her son. Now she was terrified he would disappear before she even learned his favorite food or the sound of his laughter. Daniel drove to David's school, anxiety bubbling inside him. He wanted to help them both, the boy who felt unwanted and the woman drowning in regret. He had seen too many families break under secrets. He didn't want this one to end the same way. When he found David sitting alone behind the school building, Daniel approached quietly. "You don't have to talk," he said. "I just want you to know you're not alone." David wiped his face quickly, hiding his tears. "She threw me away," he whispered. "How do I forgive that?" Daniel sat beside him. "You can't forgive instantly, but you can try to understand before you judge." David clenched his jaw. What is there to understand? Daniel looked at him gently. "She was a child, David, a scared one, and she has been crying for you every day since." David looked away, but those words planted something small and painful inside him. Later that evening, David sat on his bed staring at his phone. His fingers shook as he typed, deleted, and retyped the same message over and over again. He didn't know how to talk to her. He didn't know if he wanted to. But the image of Jennifer crying on her knees kept replaying in his mind. Finally, with trembling hands, he sent a message. "Hi, I'm not ready to talk, but I don't hate you. I just need time." Jennifer read the message and burst into tears, not of pain, but relief. She pressed the phone to her chest, whispering, thank you," over and over again. For the first time since he learned the truth, David felt like he could breathe. The road ahead was still long and painful, but at least the door was still open. Jennifer knelt by her bedside that night, tears soaking her pillow as she whispered prayers into the quiet room. "Give me wisdom," she pleaded. "Give me patience. Give my son healing. Help me prove to him that I'm not the same scared girl who abandoned him." She felt her heart breaking and healing at the same time, a strange blend of pain and hope. As she rose to her feet, she looked at the bracelet David wore earlier. "This time," she whispered, "I won't run. I won't hide. I won't fail him again." The stars outside glowed softly, as if listening. A chapter of her life had ended. Another one had just begun. The next day, David didn't avoid her message. He read it again before bed. Something inside him shifted. Not forgiveness, not peace, but a small crack in the wall he had built around his heart. He whispered into the darkness, Maybe I want to know her." And somewhere across town, Jennifer whispered the same words. Two broken hearts, slowly stepping toward healing, one painful truth at a time.